I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and sculptor and online instructor, and I'm going to be answering some questions. Would you recommend studying sculpture in college? No. So I did study sculpture in college. Utah State University, which is a fairly inexpensive school. It's a state school, and that being said, it is still very expensive. I think that the university system has a lot of issues. It's very bloated with bureaucracies and things that cost a lot of money that don't necessarily need to. I think that the future of education is going to move online, combined with in-person workshops. If it was me and I was to do it over again, I would try to focus on learning as much as I could online. So the online courses that I put out, the cost of the course is less than the cost of a textbook in college. And that course has more information than I learned in college because I studied under a sculptor who was mostly interested in abstract sculpture. So I would take that abstraction and I would apply it to the figure, but I was more interested in representational art. I was more interested in figurative art, but because they didn't really teach that, I had to go after college and learn as much as I could on my own. And then I took all of that I learned and then I put it into an online course to give people everything that I wish I would have been given in college. So here's what I would say. If you can't pay for it out of pocket, if you have to take out debt, don't go. Just work and save up. And then if you feel that it's worth it, then you can go once you have the money. The most valuable thing that came out of the college experience was the relationships, was the networking, and that can be done on your own. It takes a little bit of work, it takes a little bit of willingness to go reach out to people, but it can be done, and especially if you're willing to maybe pay for in-person workshops that you're willing to travel for to meet these types of people that are interested in whatever you're interested in, then you can start to build that network without having that huge price tag of college. Most of the learning that I did when it comes to sculpture and representational sculpture, I learned from other artists and sculptors, from YouTube, from books. At this point, I think college is pretty much a scam. Too expensive. You can learn everything online for free or for very little. Even if you get my premium courses, it's just a fraction of the cost. And if you have the determination to learn something and you're really interested in something and you're disciplined enough to set aside a little bit of time each day to learn that subject, you can learn almost anything online for free or for very little. So I wouldn't recommend it. Would you recommend going to art school? So I can't speak specifically to this because I didn't go to an art school. I just went to university. The instruction wasn't that great. If there's a specific art school where you see students that come out and have the technique and the skills that you want to develop, then it might be worth it. Realize that that's going to have a heavy cost usually, especially if it's a high-end art school. As much as you can, I would save up for that and not try to go in debt to learn, because you can start working, you can save up and pay for it later, and there's so much that you can learn online for a fraction of the cost. Should artists be political or share their political views? No, you shouldn't, but I do. Well, it depends. It depends. People tend not to like people that are overly political. I happen to be one of those people. I'm really conservative. I'm openly conservative as an artist. It pushes a lot of people away, especially in the arts, because the arts tend to be more left-leaning. I made a video about that in the past. So I would say, unless it's something that calls to you, that you're just so interested in it and so interested in these types of ideas and the political spectrum, that it's just something that you're constantly thinking about, and so you want to be able to express that openly. If that's not you, if you're just kind of, you don't really pay attention to politics, but you might have a political leaning one way or the other, I would say it's more likely to hurt than to help financially. But I'm open and I talk about politics and ideas and controversial subjects. That's just because I'm really fascinated by these types of ideas, by political philosophy and how things work. And so that's just something that really interests me. But just realize that that's a minority position to take. Whether you're on the right or on the left, it's a minority of people that actually will support you more because you mention politics rather than people that are just turned off. I don't want to be preached at politically. So that may seem a little bit hypocritical because I am open about politics. If it's something that speaks to you, don't censor yourself. Be willing to talk about things, but just realize that there's people on either side. So I say be honest, don't say anything that you don't believe in, don't be pushed into taking a particular political position just because those around you are taking that. Think for yourself, decide if it's worth it to you. If it is, stay true to what you believe and don't say things that you don't believe. Is there a difference between nude art and pornography? Well, I think there is, because there's different words for them, right? So if there wasn't a distinction, we wouldn't use different words. We say like erotic art versus the nude or the nude figure or undraped figure. It really does come down to intent and the intent of the artist. Obviously, we cannot dictate what the viewer will take away from a work of art. But as far as the artist goes, I think if you're intending to create something that arouses those erotic emotions in other people, that is pornographic, that depicts those acts and things like that, I think there is a difference between that and just appreciating the figure in the nude. And I think the figurative nude works has a long tradition, and you can usually tell the difference between those that try to do it in a way that is provocative and those that try to do it in a way that's appreciative of the bodies that we've been given, which I believe are literally made in the image of God. And so I think, the body is something that's actually sacred. It's actually something that's special. Representing that in a way that's showing appreciation is what I hope to do when I'm doing anything that's sculpting the undraped figure. But that is an interesting question. I'd be curious to know what you guys think below. What role does art play in religion or religion in art? I think most great works of art have some type of religious foundation, even if that's just that the culture of the time was religious and that kind of seeped through in the artwork, even if the artists themselves weren't particularly religious. Great works of art where the artists truly mastered the form and the figure, we're talking about figurative art, I think that those generally were people that were willing to sacrifice the time and effort and devotion that is required to create something at that level. And I think most of the time, to justify that, you have to have people that are interested enough in that topic or in that sculpture or in that philosophy or idea or story that they're willing to promote it financially. So patrons of the arts, that art needs to come from something deeper. Great art needs to try to transcend to something more. Well, this is a complicated question. I don't know if I can get to all of it. The problem with materialism, which is the type of atheist materialism, that there's no God, there's no higher purpose, and eventually the final state of every person that ever lived will be the same. That is nothingness. We'll all die. The universe will end in a cold, meaningless death, and that's it, and then there will be eventual nothingness. And so that is a very bleak, kind of depressing viewpoint. I think that there is a purpose to life, and I think that the things we do actually do matter, and that they actually will matter after we die. If you only believe that we're just meat puppets or atoms that are bouncing around, there's really no purpose to devote yourself to creating masterful works of art, because that requires a lot of effort, it requires a lot of study, a lot of practice, and then once you create the artwork, it's basically like, okay, who cares? Because ultimately, life is meaningless. If materialism is true, if atheism is true, then eventually it doesn't matter. Like, if you push the time horizon out far enough, then nothing matters. But I actually don't believe that that's true. I think you push the time horizon out and we still exist in the future, we'll still be alive. Our spirits, even though we might die, the person that we are will still exist after death. And so I think that if you want to create something that really lasts and is meaningful, I think that you're pushing against the logical conclusion of materialism or atheism. Now, there's people that have that worldview, that they're kind of atheistic, and they're great artists. So even though they have that worldview, I feel like they don't actually take it to its logical conclusion, which is that nothing really matters. But I understand that not everybody feels that way. And some artists say, oh, you can be an atheist and create great works of art. That's not what I'm saying. And I think that that's perfectly obvious, judging on how many great artists do have that worldview. I just think that they're not taking that worldview to its logical conclusion, which is that all of the artwork that you create eventually, doesn't matter. What would you rate your skill level as a sculptor? That's interesting. I'd probably say like an 8, maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I'm better than most, but I still have a lot to learn, and that's something that you learn it anew every time you create something. So I'll create something like, for example, I just did the mouth study for the mouth lesson, and I've done many mouth studies in the past, and I've done studies where I was like, oh, this turned out really good. I now know how to sculpt the mouth. But then this last time I was just really struggling with it, and I was like, man, I've done this so many times, but it's like, and I'm doing it again, and it's really a struggle. So it's really just learning every time that you actually don't know as much as you think you know, and things aren't ever as easy as you think they'll be. It just requires constant practice, constant upkeep to maintain those skills, and I'm always trying to learn and get better. But I'd say, yeah, 8.5 is probably what I'm at. See, why did you choose to become a sculptor? So I think when it comes to artists, it's basically with creative people, if you're really creative, then you're just miserable if you're not doing something creative. And that's just how I am. Like, I was going into pre-physical therapy in college, then I took an art class, and I was like, you know what, I just have to try to make this work. I took a sculpting class, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, I have to try to make this something that I can make a living doing, because it's just something that I enjoy so much. Now, that has been a struggle. Just to give an example, the figure sculpting fundamentals course over at Proco.com, I spent 2.5 years, like 30 months, something like that, working on this project part-time, writing scripts, building out the lessons, building out the curriculum that the course would cover, and just working on it, filming the dialogue, filming the sculpting part of it. And I did all of that before I ever received my first paycheck. You think, oh, it would be so nice to have an online course where, you know, the money can come in without me having to constantly like work at it. But at the same time, not a lot of people are willing to dedicate 2.5 years working part-time on a project before they receive their first paycheck. Being patient, expecting it to be more work and more difficult than you'd think. I decided, just because there wasn't really another option, I was just going to be miserable if I didn't find some creative way to earn a living. But in the arts, anything creative, it's very difficult, because there's so many people that would like to learn a living doing something as creative and fun as sculpting. And so I'm very lucky, I'm very fortunate in that way. If you could do it as a hobby and be happy, then I would keep sculpting a hobby. But if that's just not enough, you just have to do it more, then I'd say take it seriously and treat it like a job. Do market research. Look at things that are popular, find ways to sell sculptures, get in contact with galleries if that's what you want to do, or if you're interested in, you know, working on a set for films with effects sculpture or character design or things like that. Like, it is a job, so you have to build that skill, and then you have to devote a lot of time to it if you're going to make it. It is possible. There's no time in the history of the world where it's easier to make a living as an artist, but it's still really hard. So there's easier ways to make money. That's just how it is. It's easier to go find a job working for somebody that's already built up a company that's doing very well, and they just need help growing what they're doing. But I always wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to do my own things and be able to dictate my own time and work on things that I was interested in. So that was something that was important to me, and I just felt like I would be too miserable if I tried to do anything else. Just expect it to be a lot of work. Why did you choose to teach online? So I like the idea of teaching online because you're able to reach such a wide audience. There's people from all over the world that have contacted me and say, hey, I've been watching your videos and learning to sculpt. Thank you for putting out these free videos, and then also for the full course and stuff like that. So just the reach and being able to share with so many people so easily online was something that was really appealing to me. I also didn't like the idea of working under the bureaucracy that the school system is, whether it's the high school or college. I just didn't want to deal with all of that garbage that they have to deal with, and the rules and regulations, and not be able to structure the courses the way I wanted. So I wanted a little bit more freedom. I didn't like the idea of being an employee for a big school system. I still might do like in-person workshops where I'm running them. People come from around the country, and they come for a weekend or a week or a couple weeks and really dive into a subject. I think that is something that, when it comes to education, that is something that online doesn't really offer and is important. So that's something that I would like to do, but I understand that not a lot of people can afford to travel and do those workshops that are a little bit more expensive. So that's why the online courses were important to me, just to be able to have them be very accessible, not that expensive, be able to reach a lot of people and help a lot of people learn something that I'm very passionate about, which is sculpting. Okay, that's it for this video. If you have some questions that you'd like me to address in a future video, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear about that, or comment below. If you're interested in sculpting, I hope you'll check out the figure sculpting course and the portrait sculpting courses. Those can both be found at Proco.com. There's links below for those. And even if you don't get the full courses, I hope that you'll check out the Proco 3D YouTube channel and just take advantage of all the free content that we're putting out so that you can get better even if you're not yet ready to get the full courses. I hope you'll take advantage of all the free stuff. Okay, stay productive, stay creative. I'll see you around.